Ever wonder about gold? I mean, it's just a shiny metal, pretty useless for most things. Really? So how in the world did it become the ultimate symbol of wealth and power? Well, in this explainer, we're going to see that the incredible story of gold is less about chemistry and a whole lot more about our own psychology.
So before we dive into the why, let's start with a really basic question. How much gold is there actually? In the entire world?
Get this. If you took every single ounce of gold ever pulled from the earth in all of human history, you could melt it down into one solid cube, and it would fit on a tennis court. That's it. It's kind of shocking how small that is, right? And this incredible rarity, well, that's our first big clue to understanding its immense value. And what are we even doing with all this gold? Well, almost half of it is just for jewelry. A tiny fraction gets used in industry for things like electronics. But here's the wild part. Look at that huge chunk held by investors and central banks. It does absolutely nothing. It just sits there, in a vault. Its only job is to be valuable. And that right there, that's the key to this whole story.
To really get this obsession, we have to go way, way back to the beginning. Because gold isn't just some rock we dig out of the ground. Its origins are literally out of this world.
So gold wasn't even made on our planet. It was forged in the collision of neutron stars and then delivered to Earth on asteroids billions of years ago. I mean, can you imagine being an early human, finding these shiny nuggets in a river? It must have seemed like pure magic. It shines like the sun, it never rusts, it never tarnishes, it's basically incorruptible. And even though it's super heavy, it's soft enough to shape. It's no wonder that from the Incas, who called it the sweat of the sun, to the ancient Egyptians, everyone was totally captivated by this stardust.
For the longest time, gold was really just for decoration. But then, humanity made this huge psychological jump. We invented the idea of money, and that changed absolutely everything for this shiny metal.
Think about it. The first forms of money were practical things. Cattle, salt, barley. A cow is useful, right? You can eat it, get milk from it, but try making change for half a cow. It doesn't work so well, and it eventually spoils. Gold, on the other hand, is pretty useless for survival. But it's easy to divide, it lasts forever, and it's easy to carry. As a technology for trade, it's just way better. And this is the crucial part. We all just collectively decided to believe in it. We started trading something that was actually useful, like wheat, for a little piece of shiny metal simply because we believed that someone else would also accept that metal for something they had. It was a shared story, a network of belief that turned a useless metal into the universal symbol of value. Okay, so the belief in gold becomes universal, but carrying a bunch of it around is heavy and dangerous. This very practical problem led to our next great leap of faith. We started trusting paper. The idea was brilliantly simple. Instead of lugging your heavy gold around, you'd deposit it with a goldsmith or a bank. They'd give you a paper receipt, which was basically an IOU for that gold. And pretty soon, people realized it was way easier to just trade the convenient paper IOUs instead of the heavy metal. Our trust shifted from the gold itself to the institution that promised to hold it for us. And this system eventually became official. Governments adopted the gold standard, promising that every paper note they printed was backed by and could be exchanged for a specific amount of real gold sitting in their vaults. This anchored the value of money to something physical and rare. Now, for a while, this system worked, but that rigid link to gold created some huge problems, which led to the final and most abstract leap in our story of money, the point where the physical link to gold was just severed completely. During the Great Depression, the gold standard turned into a trap. The government couldn't print more money to stimulate the economy because it was limited by how much gold it had in the vaults. So, to get some flexibility, President Roosevelt took the U.S. off the domestic gold standard. And then, in 1971, President Nixon cut the last international tie, and the dollar was no longer backed by gold at all.
And that brings us to today, to the system of fiat money. The dollar in your pocket isn't backed by gold. It's backed only by our collective belief, our trust that the U.S. government will manage the economy responsibly and that other people will continue to accept that dollar as valuable. We went from trusting a physical metal to trusting a promise from an institution.
So, if our money is now just based on trust in governments, why do we still hear about gold all the time? Why, after all these huge psychological leaps, are we circling back to this ancient shiny metal?
And it's not just individuals. In recent years, the world's central banks, the very institutions that manage our paper money, have been buying gold at a record pace. So, why would they do that?
Well, it really just comes down to waning trust. When inflation rises, your paper money buys less. When geopolitical tensions flare up, the stability of a government's promise can be questioned. In times of uncertainty, people, and even governments, they look for a safe haven, a store of value that exists outside of any single country's political system. They look for gold.
Interestingly, this exact same desire for a store of value outside of government control has given rise to a modern parallel. Bitcoin, with its limited supply and decentralized nature, is often called digital gold for precisely this reason.
So the story of gold is really the story of us, of our ability to collectively believe in something that's both rare and eternal. In a world that feels more and more complex every day, the question remains, what role will this ancient stardust play in our future? If you found this video helpful, please subscribe and like it. See you next time.